Now let's take a look at our 7th through 9th English nonfiction reading comprehension. Our strategy today is 5 W's plus H. We really can apply this to any nonfiction passage, as nonfiction is informational text and fiction is a creative work of the imagination. With fiction, for example, we focus on those 5 elements of fiction. Here in nonfiction or informational text, we're going to focus on answering a few questions. This is because good authors of nonfiction answer every question. They do not leave any stone unturned, so to speak. So we'll go through and we'll answer these crucial questions: who, what, when, where, why, how, the 5 W's plus H. We'll pay particular attention throughout the passage to a few of these questions. For example, who, or the subject of the paragraph, and we do this paragraph to paragraph. The what is happening to that subject, and the why or how that thing is happening to that subject. So let's begin with the first paragraph. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York has been featured in movies, photographs, and media for over 100 years. But the bridge is much more than just a pretty sight. It opened on May 24th, 1883, and at 3,460 feet, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world, measuring 50% longer than any previously built. The Brooklyn Bridge was a symbol of American strength and vitality, but its completion followed years of toil and sacrifice. Now let's highlight. The subject of the paragraph is the Brooklyn Bridge. Here, because we have some context being introduced in our introductory paragraph, we will highlight for the when and where. The where is New York. The when is May 24th, 1883. Now, what about the Brooklyn Bridge? It was a symbol of American strength and vitality, and the question is why or how. It was the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time. And this is how we understand main ideas. Notice what we've highlighted we will take out or extract as the main idea, and everything that's not highlighted is left behind as supporting details. And this is how we summarize for main ideas. The very first important step and the skill that is tested is main ideas, will be main ideas. Once we move on from understanding main ideas with different levels of textual complexity, we are able to extend that into the next skill of reading comprehension, which is analysis. And then when we get used to analysis, we can extend that out even to critical analysis, which will be the highest level of reading comprehension and the one that will prepare us most for college. Let's go ahead and write that into a main idea summary statement. The Brooklyn Bridge, which opened on May 24th, 1883, in New York, was the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time, and therefore a symbol of American strength. This will be our full main idea summary statement for paragraph 1. Let's continue. John Augustus Roebling, a German immigrant, envisioned the bridge that would link Manhattan to Brooklyn over the East River. While in preparations for building, however, John Roebling was injured when a ferry pinned his foot to a pylon, and he died weeks later of tetanus. This first setback to the building of the bridge was indicative of the problems that would plague its construction, as well as the harrowing tenacity that led to its completion. Now let's highlight who is John Augustus Roebling. Now the question is, what about him? He died, which represented the first major setback to the construction of the bridge. Why or how? Now let's notice here we have a second who and what. This is the style of the writer. The writer's style here will throw in an extra idea at the end of each paragraph. So we can go back to this first setback. What about it? It was indicative of the problems that would continue to plague the construction of the bridge. Yet, harrowing tenacity would lead to its completion. Notice that harrowing tenacity is a bit of an oxymoron, as we have a very positive term here, tenacity, being combined with a more negative in connotation term, harrowing. And that really is the theme of the passage here, is that despite all the setbacks, the bridge is completed. Now let's put this into a main idea summary statement for paragraph 2. John Roebling's death due to a ferry injury was the first setback in the bridge's construction. However, tenacity would lead to its completion. Maybe we could write eventual, since the context here is that there were other issues. Now let's add this as our paragraph 2 main idea summary statement. And let's continue. Washington Roebling took over the project upon his father's death. Washington persevered through many hurdles in the building of the bridge, including fires, accidents, industrial corruption, and loss of public support. He continued, however, in his push to complete the bridge. In fact, it is said that he worked harder and longer than any worker he employed in even the most dangerous circumstances. While working in the caissons, underwater chambers that supported the bridge, he was stricken by the decompression sickness that led to his paralysis. Nothing could stop him, though, and he continued construction by sending messages to the site through his wife, Emily. Now let's highlight. Or who will be Roebling Jr. here, or maybe not Jr. since it's Washington, but the idea is John's son. John Roebling's son is Washington Roebling. What about Roebling? He persevered through many hurdles. And then there are many given here as supporting details. And also, we want to highlight for the biggest hurdle that he encountered, and that was becoming paralyzed. Now, how did he persevere through paralysis, which would be the worst? He worked harder and longer than any worker, and he even continued construction through his wife after he suffered paralysis. Now notice we have just highlighted the main ideas and we left behind the supporting details. Now let's put this into a main idea summary statement. Washington Roebling, John's son, worked hard and persevered through many hurdles, including paralysis, but managed to continue the construction through communication and managed to continue the construction by communicating through his wife. Now let's add this as our next main idea summary statement for paragraph 3. And let's read our final paragraph. 14 years after construction began, the Brooklyn Bridge celebrated its grand opening. The total cost to build the bridge was $15 million, and 27 people died in its construction, but it stood as a tribute to American invention and industry. Now let's highlight. Here we're back to the Brooklyn Bridge. What about the Brooklyn Bridge? It stood as a tribute to American invention and industry. Why? Because it cost $15 million and 27 people died in its construction. Now let's write our main idea summary statement. Brooklyn Bridge, which cost $15 million to construct and resulted in 27 deaths, stands as a tribute to American invention and industry. Now we have our main idea summary statements for each paragraph. Paragraph 1. The Brooklyn Bridge, which opened on May 24th, 1883 in New York, was the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time, and therefore a symbol of American strength. Paragraph 2. John Roebling's death due to a ferry injury was the first setback in the bridge's construction. However, tenacity would lead to its eventual completion. Paragraph 3. Washington Roebling, John's son, worked hard and persevered through many hurdles, including paralysis, but managed to continue the construction by communicating through his wife. In paragraph 4, the Brooklyn Bridge, which cost $15 million to construct and resulted in 27 deaths, stands as a tribute to American invention and industry. Now let's take a look at our multiple choice questions. We're going to use our notes to answer them. When we annotate for the main ideas, we then have a reference to go back to answer our multiple choice questions. Let's bring in our note, and we'll answer number 1. The primary purpose of the passage is to convince the reader that the Brooklyn Bridge is the longest suspension bridge in the world. Let's eliminate. We only want to use textual evidence here. That wasn't the primary purpose. Here we can depend on our notes to understand the primary purpose. B, describe Washington Roebling's rise to success. No, this is about the Brooklyn Bridge's construction. C, show that Americans have an inborn talent for inventiveness. The answer is no. We're looking at a focus on the Brooklyn Bridge. D says, describe how the Brooklyn Bridge was a great success despite the hardships faced in building it. Yes, this was the theme and the subject throughout the passage. Let's try number 2. It can be inferred from the third paragraph that Washington Roebling. Now, we make inferences when we understand how authors are implicitly communicating. Authors communicate both implicitly and explicitly. Implicit communication means they're implying something, and what we have to do is infer, make inferences from those implications. Now let's take a look at the third paragraph. We've written down our note already. Washington Roebling, John's son, worked hard and persevered through many hurdles, including paralysis, but managed to continue the construction by communicating through his wife. Let's go through our answer choices here. It can be inferred from the third paragraph that Washington Roebling, A, was injured by a ferry. And this is not an inference. This is explicitly communicated. We need to look for inferences that we can make. Let's eliminate A. Was determined to build the bridge despite many setbacks. Notice determination would be an inference that we would make. Evidenced by the word here, persevered. So B will work. C, suffered from depression after his injury. No textual evidence to support that. And D, had a son who completed the building of the bridge. Washington Roebling was the son. And that was explicitly stated. B is the correct answer. Number 3, which of the following is given as a difficulty faced in building the Brooklyn Bridge? This will be a specific detail. A says an excessive number of pylons in the East River. That was never mentioned. B, an outbreak of tetanus among the workers. That was also never mentioned. Now notice these words were mentioned. For example, pylon would be John Augustus Roebling, a ferry pinned his foot to the pylon. And tetanus also would be how he personally specifically died from that one unfortunate incident. But there's no mentioning of an outbreak of tetanus or an excessive number of pylons. C says the death of the man who envisioned the bridge. This is directly supported by evidence. Let's circle that one. D says a lack of funds to keep building. That also was not mentioned. We can eliminate D. C is the correct answer. Let's continue. Number 4. Washington Roebling can best be described as... Remember, he was John's son. Persistent, yes. Notice persistent is going to be a synonym of determined, persevered. These match. A will work. Was Washington Roebling weak? No. Was he clumsy? No. Was he dangerous? No. A is our answer. Now let's answer our final question, number 5. Which of the following is not stated about the Brooklyn Bridge? This is a not question. We want to be careful with those. Make sure we understand it's not. That's in all caps there. A says it was a sign of American power. Let's eliminate that one, as that is stated in the passage. It cost millions of dollars to build. Yes, that was stated as well. It was not worth the money lost in building it. That was never mentioned. C is our correct answer. Let's look at D, though. It has been seen in the movies. It has been seen in the movies. And that is in our first sentence. Let's go take a look at that. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York has been featured in movies, photographs, and media for over 100 years. C is the correct answer for number 5.